Welcome to the Warband, a World of Warcraft podcast. My name is Swaglock, and with me today is our host, Chicken. Chicken, dude, how are you doing, man? How's your week been?
It's been interesting, to say the least.
Yeah.
It's, Christmas time. Hope everyone had a good holiday. And, a lot of traveling for me. Just general stuff around the house, getting some work done. I'm lucky enough to have off work. Like, I don't work basically from like Christmas to New Year's. So it's nice to have a little time, spend some time with family, get some stuff done around the house. And I'm telling you, the good Lord is blessing me with more and more stuff to do. It's just like things are just, oh, hey, water damage. Hey, you have time to fix this. You're a flat tire. You have time to fix this. Not literally, but like it's like, it's kind of like coincidentally, if you will. So it's been good. I had a nice little Christmas, get together with my family. So that's fun.
Makes sense, dude. I always joke. Well, I was just saying today to somebody that I feel like as soon as I take time off work, like any time I take like a good bit of time off work, that's when I get sick, right? Like I never, and not even when I take time. It could just be the weekend, right? I never get sick for weekdays. It's always like, oh, it's Friday. Cause my weekend's like Friday, Saturday. I'm like, oh, it's Friday morning. I'm dying, right? And then by the time Sunday rolls around, I'm good. I'm back up and walking again. And so I've been off this week with Christmas and some other stuff. I've had like half the week off. And I swear, as soon as I got through Christmas, boom, I was out. I was out for the count and just kind of recovering a bit. I think I was over at your place helping move a bed. And then the next day I was like, never mind, I'm done. I'm just staying inside.
Yeah. Is it? Well, I won't touch on it too much, but yeah, it seems like there's definitely some stuff going around, man.
This wasn't too bad though. Like I'm building it up. It wasn't the worst. It was annoying. It was annoying that like it was mostly just being like out of energy and having a bit of a cough, but mostly good now. Mostly back up on my feet again.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's oh my goodness, it's
going around. Yeah, there's a bit of sickness going around. I will say though, on a more positive note, dude, I've been running keys again because I kind of took a break. I took a break for a couple weeks. I got all my portals. Wasn't really worrying about doing too much. I would still like to continue gearing my DK. However, the motivation just isn't there to gear my DK, right? Because we're not like mythic raiding or doing things. So I'm kind of like, what I have is good enough. Like it's good enough. And so right now I started doing some dungeons on my Brewmaster monk, and I know they buffed tank threat, so that helped a lot. That helped, especially on Brewmaster. That helped a ton. However, I feel tankier too, so I'm not really sure why that is. I don't know if maybe I'm doing something different or whatever, but there had to have been some sort of buff. If you're listening in, leave a comment, and if like if you're like, oh yeah, definitely or definitely not. Let me know, because I could be wrong. I just feel it feels a lot tankier, and I was having a lot of fun. I did my first, and timed my first 10 today on my Brewmaster, so that was good. That was a good run.
Wait, you timed it?
Yeah. It was a necrotic wake. It was a little rough towards maybe the midsection. The midsection we had a little bit of awkwardness, but outside that, it was a pretty clean run.
Was it your key?
Yeah, it was my key.
Okay. I was gonna say, dang, dude. Mm-hmm. Like maybe I'm just struggling here, man. I've been struggling with keys lately. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I'm always down to do it with you. If you need a friend, just let me know.
I saw you on earlier today, and I was like, maybe I should ask him and do a key, but then I was like, nah.
And sometimes it's fun to me to like play something different. Like I know you've been playing your Boom Chicken lately. And there's something fun. There's something fun when it's just a different class. So even if it's the same dungeons you've always done, even if it's the same role that you've always played, right? DPS or tank or healer, there is something fun that when you're like, oh, hey, my attacks are different or my defensives are different, my heals are different, just to try and navigate that. Because going from Blood DK to Brewmaster, that's a wild change, because Blood DK is all like, okay, keep healing myself. And I have a couple heals. On Brew, but I'm not. There's no crazy healing going on. I pop off the occasional Vivify. Wow, good job. But the majority of the time it's like, okay, how can I mitigate as much damage as possible, right? Like, how can I max my stagger? Am I comfortable letting my stagger really get up there? It is different. I'm more reliant on my healer, but trying to figure that out, right? That balance of like, okay, my healer can heal this much if I let my stagger build up, but I can't heal that much stagger plus big hits coming through. So trying to balance that and keep things smooth and not like overwhelm my healer, but also challenge myself to pull more or make bigger choices is really cool. So it's a nice change. I think when I play Paladin, because I play Holy Pally a lot as well, I play Holy Pally very similarly-ish to how I play Blood DK. So even though it's different, it doesn't feel that different ultimately. But going to Brewmaster Monk, it feels way different. I'm sure probably a lot of similarities for you going from DK to Boomkin.
Yeah, there's a fair amount. Yeah, mostly just because obviously I've been tanking a ton on DK, but I've been, to be honest, I threw in the occasional DPS, and I'm thinking that I don't know if I want to make the full shift yet, but thinking I might just go for the rest of my portals as a DPS. I haven't decided yet.
Yeah.
But it's very possible because I just can't, dude. I can't get through Stone Vault, man. I just have the worst time getting through Stone Vault. I don't know what it is, man.
Dude, Stone Vault. I feel like we've talked about this on the podcast. Stone Vault's my jam, dude. Come DPS to Stone Vault after we record tonight. Why don't we? I'll put if we end up doing a Stone Vault after recording tonight, I will add a little tidbit at the end of the podcast, or right now. I'll put a little bit right now to let people know if we timed it or not, okay? Swag here, just editing the podcast real quick. Wanted to make sure I let everybody know. We did, in fact, not time that plus 10. Oops.
Oh, my goodness, dude. The fact is, like, I know I could time it because it's the one thing of I just, it's my own key, so I know that if I like I have a 10 Stone Vault right now is what I'm saying, and I know if I just be picky on it.
You have it in your bags right now?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. After podcast tonight, we're running that.
Yeah, it's the first one that I've done like that. I would be like, hey, like this is what I'm gonna run.
Yeah.
You know, most of the other ones I just join as like, you know, I can't pick the group, so it's not as easy to be like, hey, like I'm obviously just gonna pick people that are good, right? And I listed the key for like 15 minutes just seeing if I could get a group of 4 people to jump in, because that happened with me, because I had a 10 miss and I was like, whatever, I'll run it as a DPS, and like the first person to queue in was a group of 4. We straight perfect. We almost 3-chested it, and I was like, okay, perfect. I was like, I'm just gonna whittle this down to a 10, which is a terrible mistake in my opinion. I should have kept that as 11. And then I was like, I'm just gonna list it, and I was like, these people kind of suck, so what can you do? Well, after this we'll go run it. But yeah, it's definitely that point in the season where if you have goals, if you have things that you want to accomplish, right now's the time to do them. Especially if you're picking up that little bit of extra power from the ring. That is garbage.
It's better now. It's better now. It's better
now that they released the Mastery Gem.
Dude, but the Mastery Gem, you can't even really get it, right? Or did they fix that?
What do you mean?
Well, I think that maybe there's 2 Mastery Gems. I have to double check. But the one gem, I was just looking up earlier because I needed it for my monk. The one gem that gives mastery is like you have to do this specific event kill thing, but then it bugs out, and so nobody was able to get it.
Oh,
but it also released right as Blizzard was going on break for Christmas. So I don't know. I don't know if it got fixed yet or not.
Yeah, so I feel like that there was one boss that was causing an issue. It was the stupid rock boss, and they it would basically like leave the little hole, and then it would like time out or something, and then you wouldn't end up getting the gem. But I did the mastery one earlier, and I didn't have any issues with it.
Okay.
Like I have the mastery one in my bag like right now.
Okay, so maybe I'm wrong. There might be 2 mastery ones, by the way. I have to double check.
Maybe there is.
It's like the thundering one that's like bugged out.
The thundering one?
Yeah, whichever one's the yellow one that gives mastery.
Oh, I didn't know there was a yellow one that gave mastery.
Yeah, I can double check. I was literally looking at just a moment ago, so I'll look into it earlier. But anyways,
yeah.
But with that said, though, now is a good time to do it. What I was saying though is it was bugged out, and players online were like arguing. I saw it on Twitter. I saw it on like the Wowhead comments because they're like, "Oh, of course, Blizzard would release the most powerful gem, make it buggy," and they're like complaining. And I'm like, guys, the only reason why it released so early is because you all were complaining about it. Because one person was like, I work in quality assurance, and let me tell you something, I would never let something like that ship without being tested first. Of course, that'd be the first thing I test. And I'm like, well, probably wasn't tested because everybody was crying. Everybody's rolling around on the floor sucking their thumbs because they'd have to wait a week or 2 weeks in order to get the citrine that they want. And so Blizzard released early, which, by the way, they probably should have released it all at once to begin with. But Blizzard releases it early, and now you're upset because they rushed it like you asked them to. You asked them to rush it, and now you suffer those consequences. So there's an irony to me that makes it kind of funny. But I did have a thought. I did have a thought about the gems, right? Because Blizzard was trying to time gate the gems. And as I look more and more into it, I feel like the answer for the Siren Isle should not have been time gating the gems. And maybe other people have talked about this. I don't know. I've just been thinking. I was literally thinking about it 5 minutes before the recording started, while I was waiting for you to hop in the VC. But I feel like they should have like quest gated all the gems. And what I mean by that is like,
you think?
Yeah. So because Blizzard knows that players are just going to go after whatever Wowhead tells them to get, right?
Yeah.
So why not make a series of quests for each of the gems, right? Every gem has its own series of quests. Then you as the player go, which gems do I want? And then you go do that quest chain. All of them available. And so it kind of naturally time gates it in the sense of you have to put the work in to get it, but you're not sitting around for 2 weeks twiddling your thumb until it's the week you can get it. Or making an alt and going, crap, I got my alt geared up, but that doesn't pop up for another couple weeks because I missed the one last week. You know? I like the idea, though. Like, let's say, I don't know how many gems there are. Let's say there's 12 gems, right? And there's 12 quest chains. Each quest chain maybe had just, like, 6 quests in or something. You know, I think it could have been a really cool way to, like, kind of push people, like, be like, oh, hey, you want to get this? Go do the quest chain for it.
Go do it. Yeah. I don't know how I feel about that because it gives people like direct access to it. I don't hate that they did it because, like you said, it's not like the gems are like so broken and busted that it's like, you know.
Yeah, but you already they have direct access to it now, right? Like it's faster to get them than what I'm suggesting.
Yeah, to a point, right? Like you're suggesting that they should all be available week 1, right?
Which they are already.
All the gems?
Yeah, Blizzard tried to time gate it and everybody cried. So then they made them all available.
I don't think they've all released yet, though,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, well, yeah. I didn't know that.
Yep. So they weren't all available on release, and then everybody was like, "Blizzard's a terrible company. This is why Blizzard sucks."
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty sure Bellular probably had a title out there like "Blizzard failed again," right, or something like that. Like, and it was probably Bellular. What's his name? I don't know his name. Sitting in front of the camera, right, hands folded together, going, "Blizzard's done it again. We can't believe that they screwed up this big one more time. They never listen." Right? Like, you know, I mean, every content creator out there. Sorry, I get bitter about it, but like, dude, one of the things that bothers me is like content creators, and I know you have to do it for the views. You have to get the views. But content creators will go from one extreme to the next for whatever gets the view, right? Like, I even think about when I make the titles for these podcasts.
Bro, I was just about to say.
Yeah, right? Because you want to make them clicky, but at the same time, it's just like, oh, like we talked about the, what was it last week, right? We talked a little bit about that survey, the class survey.
The horse race.
Oh, no, the class survey. We talked about the class survey, which was obviously fake.
I know
it was obviously fake. Like, there's no way on earth that thing was real. No way. And all these creators are out there like, this is real. We have no reason to believe this is not real. You have like 800,000 reasons to believe this is not real. You just want clicks. You want clicks. You want to get a paycheck. I get it. I do think that kind of drives stuff sometimes, and I think it makes it easy for the player base to like crap on the company that creates the game that they love, right? The company that creates the product that they have spent 20 years of their life playing. Clearly they don't suck, right? Like clearly they've done something right. Otherwise you'd go be playing, I don't know, EverQuest or whatever. So or Final Fantasy 14, maybe you do, right? But you know, I think though that I don't know. But anyways, the point being is they time gated it, people cried about it, made a big stink about it, so then they just released everything right away, but in doing so it was a little buggy because again, it wasn't the plan. I do think they should just always release them right away like that, and then gate them behind quest chains. And that way, you know, hey, these are the 3 I want. I'm going to go do these 3 quest chains. And then on your alt, you're like, oh, this alt, these are the 3 I want for there. I'm going to go do those quest chains. Or it's like, these are the 3 I want, but I already did one of those quest chains on my main character, so I don't have to do it again. I just have to do 2 now on this one. Right? However that works out, I just think that's a better strategy because you're slowing that process down a little bit. I don't know how they do that. I don't know how they slow that process down, but you slow the process down a little bit so that players can enjoy and pace themselves, right? Because otherwise, people are hopping into the Siren Isles. They're grabbing their 3 gems uber fast, and then they're never showing back up again.
Well, I mean,
but is that a bad thing?
That's what most people are doing, right?
Yeah, right.
Regardless of
well, that's what I'm saying. That's what they're doing right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even if it was a quest line, I feel like that's still what they would do.
And you know what's funny though? You know, this is not on our notes, but as we're talking about, that's one thing I love about the podcast, dude. Is as we're talking, we always find things that are interesting to talk about. I was talking about talking with a guildmate earlier this week. I want to say it was at the beginning of the week, and we were talking about the Siren Isles. And I was like, dude, I feel like there's too much to do on the Siren Isles. And I mean, there's really not crazy amounts. The nice thing about the Siren Isles, I don't really feel forced to stay there. Like was it the Forbidden Isle or whatever? The Forbidden Reach? Reach?
It was the Forbidden Isles, I think.
Forbidden Reach, I think. But anyways, I felt like forced to be there all the time. I was like, oh, I could go do the thing to open up those vaults. I gotta go, right? Like,
dude, that was awful.
I hated that, yeah. I just felt stuck there all the time. And I was talking to a guildmate this week, and he was like, man, I just wish the Siren Isles had more to do like Forbidden Reach did. He's like, the vault was awesome, and it gave me stuff to do every day, and I would go there, and I was like, dude, I don't want that. I don't want that at all.
And, like, I want the opposite of that.
Yeah, and that's what's hard, right? Like, how does Blizzard create content that people go, oh, hey, I want to go hang out there every day for the next 3 weeks and farm content and have something interesting to do. And other players who are like, I just want to run dungeons all day, don't feel obligated to be there for too long of a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
That's a hard challenge.
No, it is. I mean, there's with WoW, I feel like you're always going to make someone unhappy.
Absolutely.
There's just no way around it, man.
100%. No
way around it. You just kind of got to live with it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's tough to correct because you look at WoW Classic, and in WoW Classic, you kind of got away with it because it was like, hey, the leveling is the experience, right? And doing dungeons and raid is cool, and being able to do the hardest raid was awesome, and collect the most powerful gear was awesome. But at the end of the day, all of it still felt very similar to just the leveling process in general, right? Endgame was the goal because that was power and like achievement. It wasn't the goal because that's where the game was, right? Whereas in modern WoW, for a lot of us, it feels like endgame is the goal because that's just where the fun is, right? So like you get to max level, you get geared up, and then you can start slamming keys and collecting your portals, pushing for title, whatever it is, do mythic raiding, push every week with your guild. And so for a lot of players, honestly, I almost wonder if they would prefer just to log in, be handed the best gear possible, right? Best gear, and then just go from there, right? And then just kind of push for dungeons and stuff. I do personally like growing in power. I like watching my character improve, and I don't think people would enjoy coming into the game at first if they didn't have that. I think that's an early enticement of the game. So that's a hard one. But again, Blizzard's balancing for so many people. They're balancing for the people who just, dude, I just want to log in, have BIS gear, and then run keys. And the person who's like, dude, I want to log in and go explore the world and look at everything. And I don't want my dungeons to be rushed because I want to take my time and look at the design of the dungeons, experience the world that's around me. Look what the creators made. You have people who are just like, dude, I just like collecting things. I want to show off the stuff I've collected. I can't wait for player housing. So Blizzard's designing, like, it's almost like they're designing like 7 games in one. And
I mean, that's pretty fair.
And all 7 of those areas overlap onto each other a little bit, right? And so making something in one area screws up another, right? Like raid and dungeons are so intermixed that's really hard. They've managed to chunk PvP off on its own with gear specifically, but that becomes really hard with classes and balance and stuff like that. But then like when you look at single player and world stuff, that's where I think the overlap between single player content and party content, like PvE wise, kind of rubs, right? Because we just got news, I think, on Delves, right? In not Dinars, the Crests, Gilded Crests.
Yeah. That you can get them? Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good. You can get them, but they're capped now, right?
Yeah. Well, in next season, yeah.
Okay, so what is the cap for them again? Do you know?
It's just 18 per week, which isn't not a lot at all.
Yeah, and I feel like that's an okay balance. But I'm sure Blizzard felt pressure, right? Because people doing Delves, they probably want to upgrade their gear. And people doing Mythic Plus are like, wait, why the heck is that person getting Gilded Crests from content that, like, really, honestly, probably isn't difficult enough to justify Gilded Crests?
Yeah, I think you could get them originally from those maps, like those treasure maps. If you got one of those, I think. What?
I don't think they did. I think that's new that they're adding in next season.
Oh, see, I vividly remember getting like Gilded Crests somehow before like I even jumped into Mythic Plus. Like I didn't have a lot. Maybe. I had like 3.
Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right.
I thought it was from maybe those treasure maps, but and that would make sense because I'm pretty sure I only ever got like one of those treasure maps.
That's possible. Yeah, I think I only ever got one of them myself.
I mean, it's not 18 isn't enough to like.
No, that's like one upgrade and a few left over.
Yeah, it's kind of crappy because honestly, I feel like people are going to complain that it's not enough. Like they're just going to be like, "This is stupid."
Yeah, but if I'm being honest, enough for what?
Enough to upgrade your gear. Like, I mean, people that run Delves are just going to say, "Well,"
but they don't even need to upgrade their gear.
Well, okay. If you're running an 11 though, like, I mean, what's the recommendation for running 11? Do they even have one? Is it just like don't do this because it's pointless?
Probably. I don't know, man. To me, 11's again though. I play Blood DK, so it doesn't even. It's all fake. It's all fake. And again, if Delves are like, if you're listening and Delves are your vibe, like that's awesome. Enjoy it. To me, it's just one of those things where it's like, sweet. If you're running 11s, you get a little extra. If you want, you can upgrade a piece of gear. But I think there's a lot of challenge that Delves miss. They just miss that group content like dungeons and raid have. And some of it to the point of our earlier conversation about Stonevault and portals, some of it is just having to deal with players. Like the very reason you don't want to do group content is also part of what makes group content so hard, right? It's a team. It's a team activity can be more difficult or easier depending upon the role you play, right?
Yeah.
And by that, I mean easier in the sense of if other people are doing the work for you, yeah, it's easier. And if other people aren't doing the work for you, it becomes a lot harder. And so, I mean, if you've ever worked on like a group project in school, you know that sometimes those group projects are a little bit more difficult than the individual assignments.
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah. And to be honest, I don't think I'll ever do any 11s. It's tier 11s to get the Gilded Crest. It's just not worth my time.
No, it's not worth it. I mean, because you're only getting a few from it, right? So you're not even getting that many.
Yeah, I think you're only getting like 3 or 4. You'd have to do like an hour, probably an hour's worth of delves to get.
What does a plus 12 key give now for
a plus
crests?
12? I think gives a 20.
20,
Is it 20? Maybe it's 22.
No way. No way it gives 22 crests.
Yeah. Dude, I promise you, because we had this conversation and it was, maybe it gives 24. Because I think my notion behind it was, is it easier to run 2 +8s or a +12? Like, could you easily in less time do 2 +8s and get 12 each, or do 1 +12 and get 24?
Yeah.
And for context, this was a conversation we had with some guildies, basically, hey, and they basically were like, well, if you're doing +12, it's probably easier to do a +12. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's fair. But I mean, in the same time, like, I've steamrolled some 8s in like 12 minutes. Like, I don't think I'm doing a +12 in 12 minutes, regardless if I'm doing +12s in my everyday content.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So, are you trying to find that article to see?
Yeah, I was looking for it while you were talking, but I can't quite find the exact list. Point being, though, right? If you're capping out on 18 in delves, right? And I know they're only giving a small handful per delve, right? At that point, like, go do a 12, right? Like, go run a 12, and all of a sudden, like, you're also. But again, I think the reality is, and I think this comes alongside the whole, like, hey, content now gives scaling crests based upon how difficult that content is, right? And I think that's what justifies this. Because now we're saying, well, an 8 isn't really as hard as a 12, so 12 will give more than 8.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, at some point, Blizzard has to be like, hey, guys, you guys are just crazy for running 18s. Go. You can do it, but we're not rewarding you for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's just on you. So I think because they opened that door with scaling difficulty, I think that's where they look at an 11 an 11 delve, and they go, okay, you know what? For 11 delves, we're gonna say it's not really that difficult compared to like keys compared to mythic rating. It's really not. I'm sorry. There's no way on earth you can get me to accept that a +11 delve is on the same difficulty scale as like mythic rating. It's just not. So
mythic rating? Oh, yeah. Mythic rating.
Right? Because we're talking about Gilded Crests, right? Gilded Crests are the mythic raid crest, right? So that's what you have to compare things to. You have to say, how difficult is this compared to a mythic raid? So, +11 keys just ain't. They're not. But for Blizzard to say, hey, this is difficult. This is up there for delves. I said +11 key. +11 delves. 11 delve.
Yeah.
Blizzard saying it's not as difficult. It's not as difficult as mythic rating. But it is a challenge. It is a challenge in the single player content realm. So let's give some reward. Like, let's give a little bit, right? Obviously, you're not going to go as fast as if you're doing the harder content, but you can get something. And I think it's fair for me to say, the reason why you're hearing me be so worked up is because I love the discussion of like how these things all relate with each other, the logical processes behind them, and just the thought processes that lead to like saying, hey, yeah, you can get some crests here, you can get some crests here, you're not going to get crests here, right? And so I'm excited about the topic. I'm passionate about the ideas. I love these conversations. But if you're listening and you're like, hey, Swag, I love the podcast, but I only run like eight delves, and those are really hard for me, and I struggle. Are you saying I'm bad at the game? No, you're not. You're not bad at the game. World of Warcraft.
You're not good.
No, I'm not saying that. World of Warcraft is such a scaling game. Not everybody's meant to be at the peak, right? Like, not everybody's going to be a 1 or 0.1% key title holder, right?
Yeah,
you're just not. Like, I'm not. That's not me.
No.
I was looking at Capo on my friends list today, and yesterday, he was like queuing up for 17s, and I'm like, huh. I'm never touching that, right? Like, and I have no interest.
Dude.
No interest. I'm happy getting my portals and then playing some alts. And everybody's going to be really different in how they enjoy this game. So don't feel like what we're doing is judging, because there's no judging here. Play World of Warcraft however you think is fun. The only time I'll judge is when you come to me and go, Swag, I think I should get rewards for doing easier things than other people. At that point, I'll be like, I don't know. If you want the reward, go do the harder stuff. And there's a lot of rewards I will never get. I hardly touch mythic rating. I will never get a keystone title, right? Like I'll never get the 0.1% title. Maybe 1 year, maybe one season I'll do it. I'll push. I don't even think I could. I don't even think I have the skill, but maybe one season I'll give it a shot. But again, your skill oftentimes is just dependent upon what you're willing to push yourself into.
You go full-time content creation, you just become goated at WoW, and then you get it.
Oh my gosh.
But to be honest, I don't even think it's those guys that are getting it because they're just not pushing like that high. It's not that it's not in their wheelhouse. It's just they're just not
the content creator guys.
Yeah, like I'm thinking like Maxim and Dratnos, like they're not going for the
Max doesn't really do dungeons, so that's why.
Well, that too, yeah.
Yeah. I think Dratnos does. Growl does.
He definitely does.
Dorky does.
Yeah, but they ain't going for the 0.1%.
No,
dude.
I think they do get it.
No.
I don't know about Dratnos, but I know like Dorky and Growl get it. A lot. You'd be surprised how many of them actually do get it. But again, that's part of why a lot of those guys are so well known and so famous is because they're so good at what they do, right? Like you and I, on the other hand, we gotta talk on a podcast in order to get people to listen to us, right?
Bro, I can't get my friggin' tens time.
People listen to us for the humor, not for the expert gameplay.
Yeah, dude. Well, I mean, we're definitely. I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah. So.
Oh, by the way, I should clarify that title holder thing we keep talking about, because I don't think I've talked about. If you're in the 0.1% of keys, like mythic key rating, like the top 1.1%, you get like a special title. I don't remember what the title is, but there's like a special title that comes with it. Each season you get a new title, and it's like kind of like your reward for pushing that high. So just to clarify, when we say title keys, that's what that's about.
Yeah. So, we kind of breezed through a lot of the 11.1 stuff last week in the podcast, just because we started talking about some random nonsense at the beginning of the podcast, like we almost do every podcast.
We do every podcast.
Which we literally do every podcast. So, we're going to try to revisit some of those. I think one that we'll just quick touch on was the affix change. Last week, I misspoke and said it was the Dispel one. It's actually the Orbs one, which is 100% a win on the player base, because that affix is hot trash and it can go where Sanguine went. And unfortunately, Swag still has to deal with people not dispelling and healing bosses.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think the problem is, before we talk about the one that actually got removed, so you said we were wrong. We were wrong about the Dispel one.
So I originally thought it was the Dispel one, and it's actually the Orbs one. The Orbs one is the one that's getting away. The one where the orbs drop in, you got to collect them, and then it gives you like a mastery buff based on how many of the orbs you collected, right?
Yep. Yeah, but so before we talk about that one specifically, because I understand why they got rid of it. The Dispel one's so fascinating, right? Because like I'll run because the Dispel one, I think, affects different groups differently, and so it's less intuitive, I think, for a lot of people. The orbs one that is being removed, I think, is more intuitive, right? Like you naturally go, oh, I need to block those. Let me go block them.
Yeah, right.
Whereas the Dispel one's not as intuitive, and so when I'm doing high keys, like I did a 10 today, and I was running the plus 10 on my Brewmaster Monk. So my Brewmaster Monk actually has two ways I can remove it. I have a magic defensive that will remove any like debuffs on me. And so a lot of times I'll just pop that, because I wasn't heavily relying on it for much else. So I was just popping that to get rid of the debuff. And then I also had a detox. I think it's called detox on Monk. And so I was using that on random partners who maybe weren't able to get theirs for whatever reason. And so in the plus 10, I was almost never needing to use the detox. People usually got everything taken care of. I had one person in my group who was like hit or miss, but we never once didn't debuff them, right? It just depended on if somebody else got them or I got them first. It really wasn't a big issue. And half the time I think they just got healed up. So it was almost a non-existent problem. However, where I have really smashed my head against the walls on the dispelling one is in lower keys, like a +6, a +5, a +4 even. But like, let's say +5, +6 range. When you're on that boss fight, and people just ignore it. They just ignore it, and all of a sudden you have like
that's worse.
two or three people that have the debuff. It explodes, and now the boss's health goes up 25%. And you're just like, what the heck? And
like, what?
And they kind of fixed it somewhat. They kind of fixed it somewhat when they changed how it works on bosses that maybe have like different like scaling health, like health that doesn't go to 0 necessarily, because that was a real problem. Like the last boss in Dawnbreaker and the dragon in Grim Patrol. That was a real problem with those guys. I think it's better now, but any ability, Sanguine was another one like that. But Sanguine wasn't really a problem on bosses because Sanguine didn't drop on boss fights, right? No. Yeah, so you weren't getting it there. But any affix that causes a boss to heal, I think it needs to be looked at. I think the affix can stay, but maybe change the punishment, right? Change the punishment. Because if it's like, oh, hey, you didn't dispel it, now the boss is going to do some poison damage in their attack or something. That's annoying. That's annoying, but it's not the end of the world. We'll manage, right? But saying, hey, the boss now has 25% more health, you just drastically extended the length of that fight. You just like that fight got a lot longer all of a sudden for no reason. Yeah. And so that to me, I think that affix needs to be looked at. The orbs one though, and I'd love to hear your thoughts too. The orbs one makes sense to me, not even for normal stuff. I think on normal stuff, the orbs was a little buggy in how it worked. Like even as you said,
little.
Right? Sometimes they would move. Knowing where they were going was a little tough. But for the most part, almost every time my groups would get all of them. It was rare that it was rare. Now in lower keys, that's a little bit different. But in like 10s, it was very rare that my groups didn't get every orb every time. That was an oddity not to see that. So in that sense, it's clearly a mechanic that can be handled and handled easily. Where it was a problem, and I don't think this was bugginess. I think this was just poor forethought. I don't think Blizzard thought about it too much.
No, they didn't. I know what you're gonna say.
Is on boss mechanics, maybe on some trash, but especially on boss mechanics, where there was like room manipulation or something, like abilities going off that took up space, and you couldn't go into those spaces, and all of a sudden you're like, do I risk dying or do I get the orb? Do I risk dying? And the nice thing is if the boss got 1 orb, maybe 2 orbs, you're fine. It's gonna be annoying. Your healer's gonna stress a little bit more, but you're fine. You're fine. Yeah. You'll make it probably. But but just the fact that it could happen that way felt terrible. That you had no way to handle it. And then in the rare moments where like 4 or 5 orbs are going there. That was a nightmare. That was a nightmare. I think the example comes to mind right away is like the second boss of Arakara, where he does the swarm, right? He does the swarm. Now, I would usually on my DK, I would just run out and AMS and grab them all real quick. But not every group can do that, right? Not every group can do it. I'm just throw my full magic shield up and just go grab them, right? Unless you have like a DK, maybe a paladin, right? But even still, that was not optimal. And that, by the way, that was far from like the worst, right? That one wasn't the worst because you knew if you went out there, you had a chance to survive if you had good defensive. So that wasn't even the worst. I'm brain farting what the worst ones were, but I remember some being like atrocious because you had to stand in like a very specific spot, and then you just couldn't get them.
Yeah, no, even Grim Patrol is pretty bad. Everything's pretty tight in Grim Patrol. Yeah, and that you're right. It wasn't just the bugginess, although it was mad buggy.
Do you do when you tank Grim Patrol? Do you do first person mode on the Dragon Boss?
I started to just because it's what everyone does now, I guess.
It looks so weird, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
So for people listening, if you're tanking that boss, sorry, I don't know why I thought about it because of like the weirdness. You mentioned Grim Patrol positional. That's another one. Grim Patrol, that last boss, right? When he does his little circle.
It's awful.
But on the dragon, a lot of tanks will go into that corner. There's like this like little alley corner thing in between some pillars. and they'll back into it. And so your camera's like basically in first person mode at that point because you're just backed up against a wall. And you're like, all right, I'm going to get hit by absolutely everything, and I can't see anything that's happening with the rest of the group. Like, you are in your own little world just going, okay, don't die, don't die, don't die.
Yep. Yeah, no, that one's... I've tried it. It's kind of interesting, but...
It's kind of nice because then I don't worry about anyone else. I just do me.
Yeah, you kind of just do you, and it's like, oh, yeah, it kind of works. But, yeah, so this new thing is... It's basically like the orbs are just gonna like hover around you in like a circle. So I don't know what that will look like. Well, maybe it doesn't say around in a circle. It just says, it orbits players. So I'm assuming that means it's gonna be within like, you just kind of got to walk around and grab them.
Does it say how we handle it?
You just come in contact with it again.
Okay, so it's still another contact orbs. And probably the same punishment and the same reward.
It is, yes.
But the orbs are just behaving differently?
The orbs basically like just spawn in like a fixed location around you. It kind of reminds me of the rooted one, the entangled one, where like you'd get it and you just kind of had to walk out, right? You just kind of had to like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, entangling was a good affix because you almost did nothing for it.
Oh yeah, you didn't have to do anything, and I was a gnome, so I just hit escape artist, and it was gone.
That's true.
And so this one, I think it's more just like, hey, you're gonna be minorly inconvenienced with where you have to walk for like 2 seconds, which I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about because that kind of makes it like very. I don't know. It kind of makes it almost pointless. It's like, hey, walk. In a circle around where you originally were, and now you have 20% mastery, right? Like all the other ones are pretty, hey, you got to do this or else, and it's not like, hey, you got to do this or else. It's like, hey, you got to do this, and it's not easy, but like it's not hard, right?
Yeah.
Where this is like, this is just easy. There's no like, this isn't even slightly hard. This is just, hey, just walk around. You're done.
That makes sense. I'm sure when we see it, it'll be a little bit more complicated.
I hope so.
Well, in general, I think players tend to prefer simple affixes. Obviously, not non-existent affixes, right? Like, we do want some challenge that's happening, and I really like the Kiss Curse affixes right now. Like, this is the most I've ever liked affixes.
Yeah.
Because I do like, but it's not just pure punishment, right? Like, when affixes were pure punishment, I hated that. However, I do want affixes to require me to do something, some kind of planning ahead, some way that's making me, right? Like, when I'm all of a sudden going like, oh, you know what? It is convenient for me to save my magic defensive on my monk for the affix. It's just convenient, right? So how do I handle these fights without that? Now I might turn around and go, nope, not worth it. I'm just detoxing. But if I detox, then that means I can't also help out a teammate. So, it forces me to go, okay, what are my values? What am I doing here? Same, I'll use my monk again as the example, right? When we get the orbs that drop and they have to be interrupted, do I want to use Ring of Peace to handle that every time? Or do I want to use Ring of Peace for what I normally use Ring of Peace for and actually manage mob placement, right? It forces me to think about it and think how I want to handle those. And that to me is a lot of fun. That makes it enjoyable. And knowing that if it's done well, I'll be rewarded. And if it's done poorly, I'll be punished.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, that's that's pretty relevant. I think it comes down to, what do you use your affixes or what do you use your abilities for? Yeah. And to be honest, I'm a little disappointed that they're not rotating all 4 into next season. Not to take away what you're saying, just like a little side note, I really thought that they would rotate all 4 of them and just kind of give us 4 new ones. But now I'm thinking about it. I'm like, well, I guess they're giving us 8 different dungeons to mess around with these same 4 affixes. So I digress,
My gut tells me we'll probably see these same affixes for the entire expansion. And then we'll see a new set of affixes next expansion. They might change 1 or 2. They might change them up a little bit. The nice thing is none of these affixes are particularly complex. So it's possible. They could try some different things out. They could do some different things. The nice thing is they could even, the way these affixes are set up, it would be very easy for them to keep the punishments and keep the rewards the same.
Yeah.
And just change up the mechanics behind them. But you are right, though, right? Like when they're giving us 8 new dungeons, there is something nice going into those 8 new dungeons and going, okay, I at least know how the affixes work. So I have some comfort going in here. I have something going in where I'm like, knowledge from last season comes into this season.
Yeah. So just a really quick, I just kind of thought of this. Do you, and this kind of brings us into our next little thing about the dinars. Do you think that they're going to do a season 4 for this expansion?
Well, yes. I think they will.
Okay.
And I don't even like season 4s. I don't even care for them. It is nice having a little extra stuff to do in dungeons. It's nice that usually if they do the Dragonflight thing, which looks like they will, they'll bring all 8, or all 10 probably. I don't know what the count's gonna
be. Yeah, but that's the thing. Yeah.
They'll bring back the War Within dungeons, right? And then we'll get to play those for a season. The dungeon side of season 4 is usually pretty good. However, the raid side of season 4 is kind of doo-doo. And last time they did give us Remix, which Remix was fun, but Remix was a totally different type of content. To our earlier conversation, right? Remix is much more casual in terms of it's not really competitive gameplay, and it's not really like challenging gameplay. It's just it's Remix. It's fun, and so it gave us something to do, which was nice. But you do miss out on some of that challenging raid content. And I wish, even if they just gave us like a small raid, I don't care, dude. Bring back an old raid. I don't even care. Something that just feels fresh for us would be nice. However, to what you were saying, I don't think the dinars next season are going to be anything like how dinars have worked before.
Oh, no, I agree. I think they're going to be, and we talked about this last week, I think it's going to be very much like, hey, we're going to give you this, but it's probably going to be for your alts, right? It's not going to be for your main.
Yeah, and if you're listening,
9 times out of 10,
and you're like, I don't know what a dinar is, think of bullions in Dragonflight. It's the same thing as bullions in Dragonflight. They just call them dinars in Shadowlands. When you get one of them, you can go exchange it for basically any piece of gear from Raid.
Yeah, which is kind of broken.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely busted. The problem with dinars or bullions or whatever you want to call them, the problem is when they build these raids, they create these items in Raid that are like extra epic. They're cool items, but they're hard to get. They usually drop pretty infrequently. They're a rare sight to see, but people get hyped for them and they're excited for them, and it's cool. They want to get that piece of gear. And as we talked at the beginning of the podcast, some players can't handle not having BIS gear all the time. They just can't. Yep. Like, to them, it's like, if something exists that's more powerful and they don't have it, it's not that they look at it and go, I hope to get that one day. They get angry that they don't have it, right? It's a weird response, but like, they're just angry that they don't have this thing. Because I think players go, I think players want to treat WoW like any other game, where it's like, oh, I just log into Fortnite and I load in and I just have everything that I need because that's how that game works. Or Call of Duty or whatever, where it's like, oh, you just log in and you just have everything. But WoW you build power over time, and sometimes that's a little bit of luck. Sometimes there's a little bit of luck on the drop rates, and that luck can be changed by how often you kill that thing to maybe increase the chance of that dropping. And so dinars kind of take that aspect of the game away by saying, you know what, you get a dinar, go exchange it for whichever piece of gear you want. And I think it kind of makes those pieces a little bit less exciting. However, it is also sad when the season ends and you never got that piece of gear that you really, really, really wanted to get.
Yeah, it is, dude.
And so in season 4, they used to give out the dinars like candy. What was it, like every other week you got one basically, and then just went and exchanged it for the piece of gear that you knew was BIS. Like, everybody would pull up the list and be like, first 3 things you should spend your dinars on, right? And then you do it.
Right.
Right now it looks like you're getting a dinar pretty late in the season.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Oh my
like
goodness.
probably at this point, probably where we are now in season 2 is when you're gonna get your dinar in, or season 1 where we're at right now. It's probably where you're getting your dinar in season 2. And so what that tells me is it's Blizzard's way of going like, shucks, you didn't get that item that you've been working so hard for. Well, season's kind of coming to an end, but here you go. Go get that piece of loot, and hopefully that helps you get whatever other achievements you want done, right? So, it's to me, it feels like the right spot. It's like, okay, it's pretty late. People are slowing down. You've already tried to farm that thing, right? Nobody's going to sit around going, oh, I'm not going to bother trying to get it because I know I'll get a dinar in 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Right, or 10 weeks or whatever.
Yeah, and yeah, that's pretty far-fetched notion. And the problem with the dinars and Dragonflight or bullions, whatever you want to call them, is they drop like veteran level gear, champion level gear, and then you just had to level it up all the way to myth track, and it took like an obscene amount of materials, and that's just so impractical. Like, it's like I would so much rather just get it on like even a hero track or like a myth track from my vault if we do myth raiding next season. Like, it's just so impractical.
It does take a lot of crests.
So yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping that they are warbound, that you can use them for your alts. I don't see anything in this article that
so
says
if it's because it's renowned, it's a renown, I can pretty much guarantee it's going to be warbound. So I imagine when you get that level, then you're just gonna get it across all your alts. I'm also assuming that because it looks like it's similar to how the current catch-up system is working in Raid, where like, because right now there's a system in Raid, the Severed Strands, I think it's called, or something, whatever it is, or something. Maybe that's not it. Maybe that's the faction. I don't know. But anyways, in Raid, every couple weeks you get an extra like 1.25% damage and healing done in the Raid, right? Every other week or whatever. I imagine, or I suspect, it'll be similar to that in the way that if you're behind on that buff, you can catch up pretty fast. I imagine Renown works the same way, where if you're caught up on Renown, it's gonna be very slow. You're probably getting 1 Renown level a week, maybe 2 Renown levels a week. I don't know. I'm assuming 1, maybe 2. However,
1 or 2.
If let's say it's week 10 of Raid and you haven't touched Raid at all, and you go in for the first time, you're probably getting like a bunch of Renown, right? You're probably by the time you're done Raid, you're probably already like 8 Renown in or something, 10, right? Like, I don't know what. It's probably it probably wants you to catch up really, really fast. Because it's not saying, hey, we need you to raid 20 weeks straight. It's saying, hey, over the next 20 weeks, every week there's a little bit of a bonus, right? And so they want you to catch up pretty fast on that. So I'm assuming those are guesses based on the current system, but it seems like they want to take that current system and juice it up a little bit more, and I think that's cool.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the start of this conversation was kind of like, hey, do you think they're going to release a season 4? And the big kicker on that was at Renown 20, you get a raid portal that you get to. It works as any other dungeon portal you get for timing a 10. You get, a direct, basically, Hearthstone right to that portal, or right to the entrance of the raid. And typically we've seen those as, rewards for beating mythic faded raids, or were they called faded last season, or was faded in Shadowlands?
No, they weren't called faded. I don't think they awakened.
Awakened raids, yes. And completing the whole myth track or mythic raid for awaken, would give you the portal. Yippee, yay, hooray. So do you think that is still going to be the case if we have a season 4? Will they give the same raid portal that you can easily air quotes unlock through this renown system?
Well, it's an indication of two things. And both could be true, or just one could be true. But probably at least one is true, if not both. One, it means that there's a chance that you're right, that they are saying, no, we're going to do something different. I think they're doing a season 4. But maybe they could be doing something different that's unexpected. I don't know. That's the first possibility. They already have plans for something unexpected for season 4, or they could be saying, "Hey, we don't like that. The only way to get a portal is by completing Mythic difficulty raid." That seems scaled a little differently, right? Because like, in order to get your portals, you're running 10 keys, right? 10 keys are not on par with Mythic and Surek, right? They're just not.
Yeah.
They're not. You know, again, earlier I was giving Delve players a hard time about Gilded Crests. Now here's me as a Mythic Plus player who doesn't really run above a 10 going, yeah, I don't deserve that, right? Like that there's a difficulty difference there. But that's what gives portals for dungeons, right? Is 10s. I don't know if I love that you just kind of get them for participation now. I think challenge is good. I don't know if I like participation, but whatever. That's fine. It could have been like a heroic reward instead. Or, I don't know, or maybe like halfway through Mythic or something. But it is interesting that they offer it. And so that's fascinating to me. But yeah, I think it more is an indication that they thought Mythic was too hard.
To get those.
For that reward.
Think?
For that reward, yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, personally, I think if you're doing a 10, a plus 10, you probably are capable of doing maybe the first couple bosses in Mythic rating. Would you disagree with that?
If you're running plus 10s, yeah, you absolutely could do the first couple bosses in Mythic rating for sure. I would say you're definitely capable of doing the first 4 skill wise.
Yeah. So maybe it is, but you know, while you were talking, I kind of pulled up the roadmap for 2025 because you know I'm just genuinely curious, and you know it mentions here, you know, we have the Warcraft or World of Warcraft Midnight expansion being basically like revealed. You know, they're kind of putting it at like end of summer, maybe like middle of summer. You know, kind of right after the season 3 launch, and you know, this article is basically saying like, hey, you know, that's a good possibility that early 2026 would be the launch of this new expansion, and that kind of lines up with not having a season 4, because season 2 we're assuming is going to start probably in February, right? That sounds pretty logical, which would kind of take season 2 through maybe midsummer when season 3 kind of comes along, and maybe they do maybe a brief like season 4 for like 2 months. But I don't know, maybe we won't have a full-fledged season 4. I mean, last expansion it was just the 0.7 patch of season 3, and even though it sounded, you know, kind of weird when they released it, it still lasted just as long, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're possibly right? Because that reveal looks like it's coming out of the end of summer, right? Yeah. So we're probably looking at end of August is when they're looking at that reveal. And the turnaround time from reveal to launch is probably just like a month, maybe a month and a half, right?
Yeah.
So who knows? It's hard to tell. Well, but again, they probably need enough time for season 3. So you might be right. There might be no season 4. And I wouldn't complain. I would have no complaint. I'm sure some people
first here.
I'm sure some people would be like, "Oh man, they're just trying to get us to buy expansions sooner and sooner." Well, I mean, between you and I, dude, I'd rather buy expansions more frequently than extend them with season 4s, right? Like
then play season 4, yeah.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, right? Like I want to play that expansion. I want to get to that expansion. Yeah. Now, if you said, "Hey, if they cut out season 3 and 4." And then did the next expansion, I'd be like, no, that's stupid. I'd be like, that's stupid,
yeah, that's
right? Like,
rough.
The problem is they're cutting something out that's just like rehashing content and stalling for time, and that to me is fine.
Yeah.
And Blizzard has said that they did want to speed up the time between expansions a little bit.
Yeah,
and it's fair because they do drag a bit, and WoW's a different game than it used to be, and so. It is very dependent upon that end game content now in a way that more so every expansion. Now you have delves too, right? And so it makes sense. Yeah. It makes sense that they're like, no, we want people to always feel like they're playing. I think this is the way to think about it. They want people to always feel like they're playing something fresh.
Yeah. No, it's and right now I would hard say that 90% of the people say that WoW is not fresh right now.
Yeah. Yep.
And, you know, how do we get there? Well, obviously 0.7 patch, you know, held us over for a week or two. And, you know, like you said, once people complained and everything was, you know, reversed, that they're like, okay, we'll just give you all the gems now.
Yep. And we are getting
now
player
people are just like,
housing. They say we're getting player housing at the very start of winter, right? So that's what the roadmap shows. The 2025 roadmap shows player housing at the start of winter. And so if
I don't think I realized that.
And if that's the case, player housing is probably part of pre-patch. I would imagine player housing is a part of pre-patch. They don't want to put that out too soon, because if they put that out too soon, and they clarified this after. Oh wait, they do have an 11.2.7 on the roadmap, by the way.
Yes,
and which has historically been season 4. So it could be, but again, 11.2.7 doesn't say new dungeon pool.
No, it doesn't.
It just says story and quest, new content, and system updates. So we don't know. We have literally no clue. There's nothing that we know. We know nothing about anything. There's nothing. All we know is that player housing, though, will probably come out at the start of winter. Player housing will also probably be a part of pre-patch, unless they're playing some wild game where, like, we want you guys to have player housing for a couple months before the expansion launches. But historically, big expansion elements will launch, like Evokers, for example. They gave us Evokers a couple weeks before, just to do like the starting zone. I don't think we could do much more than that.
No, I don't think you could.
But that is key for us to just be aware of. I think that player housing will probably come around that time, and they did clarify in the promo video for player housing. They did clarify that it was a midnight element, right? Like what's the term? Gameplay element for midnight specifically. What's the term? What's the term for that? I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's more like dependent on midnight. Like there's going to be more things in midnight that have to do with player housing, because if they release player housing now, it's just
I mean specifically that it is part of what they're selling you with midnight, if that makes sense. Like buying midnight, you are getting this thing, but I can't think of what the word is for that. Oh well, it's a part of midnight, right? The package, and so
it's like dependent on midnight.
Yep. So I do think. Well, I don't think dependent, right? Like I think dependent implies. I don't know why I feel like I need to clarify this. Maybe it's just for myself. Maybe it's for myself. Dependent implies, right, that there's elements from Shadowland or from midnight that you need in order for player housing to be good, which is probably true. It's probably true. But I mean, not even as dependent. I mean, it's like it's
like required
product. It is a product from midnight.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That works.
It's shipping. It's shipping with midnight, right?
Oh
and
my
so
gosh.
for us to get it, for us to get it, right, it means that midnight's right around the corner, and they're just teasing. Yeah. They're teasing midnight with some player housing. So I'm guessing probably 2 weeks.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't think they'll have it for. I think you're right. I think it'll be part of the pre-patch, and it'll just be a quick, like, hey, this is a quick storyline into how.
And I'm thinking about it right now. I'm thinking and stuff. Yeah. And I'm sorry, my brain's kind of going on this right now, because I'm thinking about it in my mind. I was like, because when did we get War Within? When did that launch?
It launched late April.
Late April. Okay. See. Because I think historically we've done like a 2 year time period, but they did say they want to cut that down. Because if we're thinking about the roadmap correctly, that gives us about a year from now, right? Possibly less than a year from now. Especially, I don't know, but probably less than a year from now, we're getting midnight. And we've only had one season so far, and that season's not done. And it's not like they're dragging the season out, right? It's just a normal season. Not. It feels dragged out because it wasn't the most exciting season, but only one season.
Yeah,
man. Yeah, this is gonna be a pretty fast expansion. I'm not complaining though. It feels good.
Yeah. I mean, typically a season is around like 6 months. Yeah, I don't think that. Yeah. You saying that out loud, I would be hard pressed if they were to do another 4-season expansion. And maybe that's why, there's the talk of, hey, these expansions are kind of building off each other because they kind of want to get rid of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of seemed like a decent way of like, hey, we're trying to streamline content as quick as possible. And I'm 100% with you. Hey, I'm gonna like buy the expansion is fine because I'd rather spend money on an expansion because I'm probably gonna spend it on game time regardless if there's a season 4. So I'd rather prioritize the money I spend on game time to be actual money I want to use for good content and not just recycled content, right?
Yep. So, because I think for some people they're like, oh no, I don't want to get rid of season 4 because now that's less time I'm getting from my purchase in that expansion, which is fair. But also, I think it might be different ways that you play the game too, right? Whereas for me, it's like, no, by that point they're not offering any new content in that expansion. I'm ready for the next one, right? Like, here we go, move on. I have gotten it all. I've played through it all. I'm ready for the new one.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, so the last thing that we'll touch on real quick was the trinkets and items released, which I looked over the trinkets when they first released, and they just released some of the go-to or what we would call like the BIS, air quotes BIS items. And there's a back and a weapon and a couple weapons and then a ring. And obviously if that's something you want to check out, you go do that. But the trinkets, the raid trinkets, I kind of like what they're doing now, and I've noticed it this season a lot. And it's not something I necessarily noticed in Dragonflight as much, where they're kind of making the trinkets a little more, I don't want to say universal, but almost universal in a sense, right? Like I think of this season right now, for me as an Unholy Death Knight, there is 3 trinkets that I can have that basically have the same effect, right? There's the transmitter, there's the one from Grim Batol, or maybe it's from Siege, and then there's the one from Stone Vault. They all give you blanket mastery or strength, right? And they're all on the same cooldown. They're all minute 30, which kind of lines up with the Unholy cooldown. And it lines up with a lot of classes cooldowns. Yeah. And I see that in these trinkets that they're basically, I don't want to say they're all the same, but they're kind of giving, almost like a blanket effect. Like, hey, like these cooldowns are the same. The effects they're giving are virtually the same, or they're like like a flip-flop where, hey, the trinket gives you strength, but the on use is mastery versus, hey, this trinket gives you mastery, but the on use is strength, right? And I see them doing that a lot more, and I like it because it gives you the opportunity to have more, air quote BIS trinkets or BIS, items, and not just reliant on one. So, props to Blizzard on that. But I don't know what your thoughts, if any of these trinkets stood out to you, or if you even looked at them.
Admittedly, have not even looked at them. I'm a tank. I don't think trinkets. I don't think trinkets excite me as much as maybe they excite other people. They're good. Trinkets are powerful. I just kind of, if I'm being honest with you, as a tank, because survivability is my first thought. Especially now that they're trying to make trinkets less damagey focused for tanks. They've been working really hard on that. Right, damage trinkets no longer work at full efficiency for tanks or healers, so they're trying to do all that stuff. So a lot of times when it comes to trinkets, I just, whatever, and it's not always the best way to do it, but whatever is the highest eye level, I usually just grab. And then I like to learn how to play that trinket. And it just forces me to play the game a little bit different, and that can be really fun. And oftentimes I'll know what my BIS trinket is, and so I'll be trying to work towards actually getting that on myth track. But there's something fun to me being like, oh, hey, here's 2 different trinkets I haven't used before. Let me try them out. Like right now, I'm using one on my Brewmaster that heals me, or it'll heal me over 20 seconds, but also any healing I receive that pushes me over my max healing, any overhealing I get, increases my health by that amount during those 20 seconds permanently till the end of combat. And so in my mind, I'm like, dude, is this abusable? Like I haven't thought much about it, but like I was like almost gonna ask a healer friend to run a key with me and just see what happens if I keep chain pulling packs and keep popping that trinket every time it's available. And like every time I pop it, like having like a macro or a weak or something that like tells my healer to start over healing me. Can they like, can my health get juiced? So just personal pulling, I pushed it, I think, up towards 2 mil extra health.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
Yeah. But that was just
That's
me.
nuts.
That was just me using like personals and stuff. Can I, if I have a healer that knows how it works, can I actually make this like busted? Can I make it busted, right? Like basically invincible busted. I don't know. I want to find out. So there's something fun to me with that, just like learning how different trinkets work as a tank.
Yeah.
Just be like, oh, how is this? How do I use this in this situation versus this situation? So those are fun. I don't really look at trinkets all that much. There is a two-hander. I think it's a mace. Might be an axe. I think it's a mace. There's a two-hander mace right now, though, that has a chance to give you random highest secondary stat. But then if you use it, it gives you a bunch of that stat right away. It reminds me of the mace that the jailer dropped, the jailer's hammer back in Shadowlands. So I'm kind of excited for that. That was cool. Because that's different, right? You don't normally have a weapon that does something like that. I'm curious to see if it'll actually be good or not, but I'm excited.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's literally called I hope that I don't know if this is actually what it's called. It's literally called Best in Slots.
Yeah, it is. That's what it's called, Best in Slots.
So that's kind of funny.
It looks like there's like a slot machine boss called the One-Armed Bandit or something.
Oh my goodness.
So that's probably what it drops from, probably. I don't know though.
Most likely will be Best in Slot for most people.
Yeah.
So, any two-handed strength or agility person, well, it'll probably be Best in Slot.
And then also it's worth noting before we wrap up the podcast, there are some major talent revamps going on for some classes. Like I think Druid maybe is getting some, Hunter's getting some. Yeah. Hunter's gonna be an interesting one because it's changing a lot of pet stuff. So it's allowing you to like choose your pets. Sorry, I burped there. It's allowing you to choose your pets like personality, for no better word to say right now comes to mind. I got sick brain right now, so I can't think. Yeah. But it allows you to like choose what type of pet your pet is, right? Like what type of tax it uses, etc. But then like for marksman, I think it's marksmanship. Instead of getting an actual pet now, you get like a bird. And it's not really you get like a bird, I think. It doesn't really count as like a combat. Like it's in combat, but it doesn't count as like an actual pet technically. Yeah. From what I understand, from what I've heard. And so that will be interesting. It's supposed to basically just give you one less thing that you have to worry about playing marksmanship. And so yeah, it's interesting. Some interesting changes. I think Priest got some changes there too. So I'm excited to see how some of that turns out. It seems like Hunter got, I think, the brunt of it, especially in like class fantasy side, but also just gameplay.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of neat. Yeah, I saw that they were doing something, but they weren't doing a lot to Death Knight, so I didn't read the rest of it. Yeah. Kind of sad, but anyways. Oh,
so apparently the hammer I'm looking at doesn't have any secondary stats by default.
Oh, well that's
so it's not quite the jailer hammer, because the jailer hammer did have secondary, correct?
No, it didn't.
It didn't?
No, it did not.
Oh, I thought it did.
No, it did not, or else it would have been busted, dude. If it had secondary stats, dude, that thing would have been busted. The gavel only had like a similar thing where you kind of
you juiced up.
They kind of just gave you like ridiculous
interesting
attacks, or it gave you like ridiculous stats for like, I don't know, 60 seconds or something.
Interesting. Well, that is all the time we have for the podcast today. We'll have to get to sort of viewer questions next week. However, if you want to ask viewer questions, I keep saying viewer, but everybody's listening on audio. We haven't started doing video yet. If you're listening and you want to ask any questions for the podcast, and these can be questions about our opinions on stuff. These can be questions about things that maybe you struggle with and WoW to understand. Also, bring us your opinions. If you're like, I have this idea that would make WoW better, share it with us, and then that gives us something to talk about. We might agree with you. We might disagree with you. If we disagree with you, take what we say and then shop your idea some more and come back with something even better. Yeah. But the fun of it is that we love being able to talk about your questions on the podcast. It's
World
fun.
of Warcraft.
We do love talking about World of Warcraft. So if you want to ask questions, there's 2 ways you can do it. In the description of the podcast, wherever you're listening, you'll see 2 links. One will say send a text. You can text us. We don't actually see your phone number, so you're safe there. But please do give us your player name so we know what to call you when we answer your question on the podcast. The second way that you can leave a question for us is through the Questions for the Pod channel on Discord. I have a link to my Discord in the description, so feel free to click that. I did just clean it up, so it's feeling nice and fresh right now. If you want to pop in, say hi, chat about your favorite video game ever, World of Warcraft. But yeah, those are a couple things. I also stream. Swag here streams on Twitch, usually about twice a week. However, I've been away while sick and celebrating Christmas. But you can follow me there. There's a link in the description. And I'll be posting to YouTube some more as well. So there's a couple ways you can stay up with my content. We will keep hassling Chicken to post content, and once he does, we'll put his links in there as well. In the meantime, join the Discord and tell Chicken to start making videos again.
Yeah, hopefully next year we can kind of get into that.
Perfect.
So we'll see.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Warband, a World of Warcraft podcast. And we can't wait to sit down and talk with you all again next week.
Or next year. Boom.
Ooh.